and for a poem called They Came For Me. And I sort of paraphrase. It says, first they came for the socialist. I didn't speak up because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionist. I didn't speak up because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak up because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was nobody to speak for me. Today is Ashama. Tomorrow is Committee 10. Next day is East Legon. Then it comes to Ajengano. Then it goes to Osu. This is ridiculous. The people that are involved must be apprehended and brought to book. We are not a military state. What kind of a country is this? It should never, ever, ever happen. Eventually, those speak up, they'll come for you. What gives the military the right to go and brutalize civilians? What gives them the right to beat up my driver? Ridiculous. And I've sat in this country and seen parents, adults being whipped, being stripped naked, being made to carry excrement, destroying the dignity of families, and they've carried this destruction for generations. Is that what we want? Well, they must start by at least apologizing to my driver and repairing his motorbike. And then those involved must be brought to book. This is totally unacceptable. Because eventually they'll come for you and there'll be nobody to speak for you.
Yeah. And there are many, many victims, just like your driver.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Suffered.
What kind of a country is this?
Dignity.
No. It's not a military state. The military has no authority to brutalize and arrest. Absolute zero authority under no circumstance. Zero. It could have been me going to a shaman. They would have beaten me up. At my age, I'll be dead. Anyway, thank you. I'm sorry. And also, I'd like to say a big up to the women of this country.
Oh, yes.
We should recognize that at least 50% of the population are female, and a nation that is not able to tap into its resources to the extent that allows the best people to rise, find difficult to progress. So we need to support our women to develop and grow this country.
Thank you. Thank you. Timely comments there from Ken Thompson. And we're going to get into the state of the nation in just a moment. First, though, let me tell you about what's happening with the second edition of Agritech West Africa exhibition. Now, they have co-located with Food and Beverage and Food Pack Tech Ghana exhibition. So it's happening from the 15th until the 17th of March 2023 at the Accra International Conference Center. Now, the event is organized under the auspices of the Ministry of Food and Agriculture and the Ministry of Trade and Industry, with support of West Africa Chamber of Agriculture, and then a bunch of acronyms that I really, really love. There's CropLife Ghana, Guta, Fabag, Fong, Phage, Guzakuza, Affinvine, Agric Today, and many regional farmers, cooperatives, and groups. The event covers the entire value chain of agriculture industry, with close to 100 companies exhibiting from India, South Africa, Turkey, Nigeria, Ghana, Europe, and other parts of the world, representing multiple product segments like agrochemicals, agriculture technology, irrigation, biofeed, food processing and packaging technologies, food ingredients, processed and packed foods and beverage items, among others. So, of course, you can look forward to meeting with Ghanaian partners for business partnerships and being introduced and adapting new products and process innovations. So, block your calendar, 15th to 17th of March 2023, and visit the expo at Accra International Conference Center. For more details, you can call Mr. Thomas James. He's the project director, and his number is 02 77 700 745. Or Stephen Armour, he's a communications officer. His number is 02 416 70739.
And getting cash on the go from an Absa ATM is now so easy, even when you don't have your contactless Absa debit card with you. For the first time in Ghana, you can withdraw money from any Absa ATM with the Absa mobile banking app using a QR code. It's easy, safe, and convenient. Simply open your Absa mobile app, select ATM QR cash to scan the QR code on the ATM screen, follow the prompts, and get your cash out. Easy. That's another digital innovation that gets things done. That's Africanacity. That's Absa. Download the Absa mobile banking app now to get started, or visit the nearest Absa branch to sign up.
Okay, I have a riddle for you. They are smart, unique, bold, fierce, beautiful, brainy, not forgetting caring. Who are they?
women.
Women, a masterpiece from God. To all the incredible women in the world, shine on, not just today, but every single day. Allianz Life Ghana wishes all women a happy Women's Day and beyond. And you may reach Allianz Life on Allianz Life Insurance on 0308 249 090, or you can go to their website allianz-gh.com. Allianz Life, we secure your future. Okay, so yesterday the president delivered the State of the Nation address. Let's hear some excerpts.
Mr. Speaker, I must say, however, that the current shortage of some childhood vaccines in the country has concerned me greatly. This shortage, if prolonged, will affect negatively Ghana's childhood immunization program, which has been recognized as one of the most successful in the world. The WHO has only recently expressed worry about a steady decline in measles vaccination coverage globally because of the concentration on the fight against COVID-19. In accordance with our desire not to become part of this global trend, government has taken steps to ensure the stocks of these vaccines are procured and supplied as a matter of urgency and emergency. The Ghana Health Service has developed an elaborate program to catch up on children who have missed their vaccine immediately stocks arrive. Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage all parents and caregivers to ensure that eligible children are vaccinated once this program begins. No child should be denied access to vaccination. Mercifully so far, not a single child has died as a result of the outbreak. This House has already passed into law the National Vaccine Institute Bill, which is yet to be brought for my assent. In the near future, this institute will ensure that no matter what happens to the global vaccine supply chain, we can produce our own vaccines locally. The Gold Purchase Program by the Bank of Ghana and the Gold for Oil policy are creative uses of our resources, which are already bearing fruit. These policies are aimed at achieving two results that are critical to the health of our economy. Firstly, they will help us preserve foreign exchange, especially the US dollar. And secondly, they will enable us to stabilize the price of oil products, such as petrol and diesel, on the domestic market. We have already seen some success on both fronts, with the price of US dollars and petroleum products falling since we announced the policy and began to implement it. The average price of petrol at the pump, which had risen to 20 cedis a litre in the middle of December 2022, is now 13 cedis and 80 pesos a litre. The price of diesel had risen to more than 23 cedis and 70 pesos a litre, and is now selling on the average at 13 cedis and 80 pesos a litre, which is a reduction of almost 10 cedis a litre. We expect this trend of falling fuel prices to reflect soon in our daily lives, since transport fares affect the price of everything. I hope the trend of prices going up and coming down become a regular feature of our retail economy, as being demonstrated in the fuel prices. Because as we all know, prices, especially of petroleum products, used only to go up in our country. As is the fact that the government is committed to honoring all coupon payments and maturities in respect of both old bonds and the new bonds, in line with government fiscal commitments. Mr. Speaker, we're also making progress on the external debt negotiations since the government announced an external debt service suspension on 19th December 2022 for certain categories of external debt to ensure an orderly restructuring. This suspension is an interim emergency measure toward a comprehensive external debt operation which will contribute to the restoration of our debt sustainability in line with our request for debt treatment under the G20 Common Framework. I want to express our appreciation to members of the Paris Club and to the People's Republic of China for the cooperation they have so far exhibited to us in attempting to reach an agreement and in their attempt to establish an official credit committee. We look forward to their fast-tracking the needed financing assurances for IMF approval. We are confident that with their cooperation, we will reach our March deadline for going to the fund. We remain resolute in our vision to restore macroeconomic stability and promote inclusive growth. I would like to state categorically that this government has built more roads than any government in the history of the Fourth Republic. And Mr. Speaker, the details of all these roads are attached in the annex to this message. I have done so because last year when I made a similar pronouncement, I was met with howls and gasps of incredulity from the minority benches. And so I thought it appropriate this time to present it as an annex to the statement. There are legitimate questions being asked about how the country's debt situation got to where it is. Mr. Speaker, let me state emphatically that we have not been reckless in borrowing and in spending.
Honorable members, it's not yet your time to say, wait until that time arrives. Please, honorable members, I will allow spontaneous reaction to statements, but I will not allow debate of the statement. Your Excellency, you may proceed.
It is worth noting that the debts we're serving were not only contracted during the period of this administration. Mr. Speaker, we have spent money on things that are urgent, to build roads and bridges and schools, to train our young people and equip them to face a competitive world. Considering the amount of work that still needs to be done on the state of our roads, the bridges that have to be built, considering the number of classrooms that need to be built, the furniture and equipment needs at all stages of education, considering the number of children who should be in school and are not, considering the number of towns and villages that still do not have access to potable water, I dare say no one can suggest we have overborrowed or spent recklessly. The economic consequences from the pandemic have been devastating. It is precisely because the economic fallout from the pandemic is so widespread and long-lasting that it is important to show clearly that the COVID-19 funds were not misused. It is critical that we do not lose the confidence of the people that a crisis that they were led to believe we were all in together was abused for personal gain. Mr. Speaker, it was government that asked for the COVID funds to be audited, and I can assure this House that nothing dishonorable was done with the COVID funds. The responses from the Ministers for Health and Finance on January 23rd and 25th, 2023, respectfully, sufficiently laid to rest the queries from the Auditor General's report And I believe any objective scrutiny of these statements from the Health and Finance Ministries would justify this conclusion. Today, we live in a country in which we enjoy complete freedom of expression, freedom of association, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, and political affiliation. Indeed, freedom of speech has now rights that even members of the diplomatic corps feel able to join in our national discourse and pronounce on matters that will be problematic for Ghanaian diplomats in their countries of origin. Nevertheless, Mr. Speaker, it seems to me the important thing in our free speech environment is actually to try and hear each other instead of raising the decibel level of our individual points of view.
Well. So yeah, these are some of the things the president talked about. Obviously, the first thing we wanted to know was how you feel about it. So we hit the streets and asked a few of you for your reactions to the State of the Nation address.
So upon listening to the State of the Nation's address today, I think this government is bent on destroying the economy so far as they are in control. He's saying his term in government has been one of the best. Of course, it's been one of the best, living under disaster.
For me, I didn't listen to anything because Ghana is too hot. I need money to pay my bills and other stuff, so I don't have the time to go and sit there and listen to all the things, the promises that you say that you will not fulfill. My brother, economy, the crime, who are new year.
Formally, I listen to the president a lot because of how he do things. He don't practice it. You see, he's very killing himself to build a cathedral, but I don't see the need for the newborn babies vaccines. So me, I don't want to listen to him.
I like what he said. Our president promised Ghanaians for a better Ghana within 6 months to next year. Ghanaians will see something better. So let us support the government so that everything will be better.
Yeah, interesting views from the streets there. Okay, let's come into the studio. Ken Thompson is the CEO of Dalex Finance. He's a thought leader on business and economic matters. We're also joined on the phone by engineer Abdulai Mahama. He's a civil engineer, construction consultant, and we're glad to have him for particularly the part about roads. Engineer Mahama, good morning to you. Thanks for joining. Do we have Engineer Mahama on the line?
Yeah, I'm here. Good morning.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining. All right. We'll start in the studio. So the president says that they did not borrow recklessly or spend recklessly.
Okay, so let me start by making a general comment about the State of the Nation address. The gold standard for State of Nation addresses was the one delivered by the president in 2017. The president delivered a magnificent speech with passion and was as if he was speaking to the spirit of Ghanaians. You know, he gave us so many insights. An insight is like a fridge being open. When the door is open, the light comes on. And he invited us to come on a journey with him. The president talked about all the things that we're thinking: the jobs, the borrowing, the economy, the private sector, the need to grow, our young people, education. And by the end of the speech, we were lockstep with the president. You know what lockstep means? You know, when the army is marching and they are we were lockstep with the president. And the president had gripped us emotionally. Unfortunately, what we did not realize was that the State of the Nation address is like asking the class prefect to write a report on their performance. The only thing the class prefect can do is to make positive noises about how they have performed. It's self-assessment. Right. And in 2016, the assessment was on a previous government. So generally, the State of the Union address then takes you, at that point, took us on a high. And unfortunately, that gold standard, we've not been able to achieve anymore. That we haven't been able to achieve. And it's going to be difficult. It's a tall order. With respect to borrowing, is that what we talk? Which one did you talk about? Ask me about.
He said that they have not been reckless in borrowing and spending.
Yeah. I take no pleasure in saying that I predicted way before COVID that the way we were borrowing, the economy was going to crash. And that was before COVID. And I said publicly that if anything should happen, we'll crash. COVID happened and we crashed. That's one thing. Number two, there's nothing wrong with borrowing. There's nothing wrong with borrowing. But there's good borrowing and there's bad borrowing. There is good borrowing like Singapore, where you borrow to fund infrastructure, just infrastructure, where you've done analysis to show that it will deliver a return greater than the cost of the debt. That's good borrowing. And there's bad borrowing. Bad borrowing is when you still have the money, where the projects are not completed, and we see a lot of uncompleted projects throughout the country, and that's all. And what we forget, that's all done with debt. And then the projects are cited in places for political reasons, not because they deliver economic benefits. And we do a lot of bad borrowing. In any case, you cannot spend more than you earn or expect to earn. So, for example, your father may decide that it's important and improves the health of his children if he extends the house and he builds more rooms and puts in air conditioning. If he's not able to pay for that, eventually you'll be thrown out of school. You'll be thrown out of school, you'll be thrown out, you'll not be able to afford food, you can't pay your hospital bills. So we've got to ask ourselves, which one did we do? Good borrowing or bad borrowing? Bad borrowing, where you are even using long-term funds to fund recurrent expenditure, to pay for salaries. That's our problem. That is our problem. So for me, yes, maybe you build the roads, but where has it led to? And it's not an issue with this government in particular, but something we've done over and over again and justify the borrowing because we say we build certain kind of infrastructure. But you've extended your rooms and you've crashed. Now you can't pay your school fees. But I take no pleasure in saying that I, Ken Thompson, predicted publicly that this was going to happen the rate we were going, way before COVID.
So I mean, talking about infrastructure, for instance, roads, the president has talked about it. In fact, he presented an annex to Parliament where he talks about how, over the last 6 years of his tenure, thousands of kilometers of roads have been built. So he's used the money on the infrastructure. Shouldn't that make it good borrowing?
You see, you can build as many houses, you can borrow to build as many houses as you like. But if you can't generate the income to pay for that debt, you crash. And eventually, you lose all those houses and your children will be thrown out of school. We should decide. So now we're in a situation where we've had to do a domestic debt exchange, which is literally, put so much pressure on the economy. We have a situation where now the private sector is so weak, the issue of job creation is a challenge. Is that what we want? We must decide. Is that what we want? We can borrow as much as we like, but you will crash because you don't have the income to support that debt. And that is the matter we should be discussing. That is the issue. That you can borrow to build, you can borrow to build a football field. You can borrow to build swimming pools. You can borrow to do anything you like. Can you afford to pay for it? Because eventually you will crash.
But there's another point there. The fact that sometimes, yes, affording to pay is very important. But there are times that communities need these facilities too.
You can decide to do anything. I come from Shama. They can decide to go and build a swimming pool, Olympic-sized swimming pool. That's no problem. If people give them the money, Shama can build an Olympic-sized swimming pool. They can build a first-class cemetery. They can build a stadium. But the community will crash, and eventually the children will be thrown out of school. They can't maintain those pools, and that money would have been wasted.
So what if, for instance, Shama needs a road linking two communities? They don't produce much in those communities, but of course they need those roads to enable people to travel from one place to another, and even children to get to schools. You can't get the money back, but of course you are serving the social
Then
purpose.
don't build the road. If you can't afford it, don't build it. Go and put laterite on it. What are we talking about? It's not a right. Having infrastructure is not a right. It's something that we do to develop ourselves. It's not a right. If we can't afford it, we can't do it. If you go and you know, really, the countries that I like the most are really, when it comes to this issue about infrastructure development, are the French-speaking countries. When you go to Togo, you see a lot of sandy roads. They can't afford it. But you know why? Because the system they have doesn't allow them to borrow as much as we can. Yes.
So we're reckless.
I don't want to be the person who said we're reckless. I don't want to say that.
But the evidence, all you've told us suggests we've been reckless.
I'll leave your listeners to make up their own mind. But I, Ken Thompson, said publicly that the rate we're borrowing will result in a crash in a situation like this. And that was before COVID. And I said that if anything should happen like a famine, we're going to crash. I mean, hello. We should decide. But this issue that we don't deserve anything. Anything we have to work for it. Who says my Shama deserves a road? I mean, now, last time I went there, I mean, there's so many holes in the road. It was probably easier if I carried my car. If it cannot be justified economically, the road should not be built. Full stop. And then go and build the road, probably in Takwa, the western region, where they are producing food. That's what it's about. And where the minerals come from. What are we talking about? We don't have any right to infrastructure. It's not a right. It's not a God-given right. It's not a God-given right. It's who says that there should be a road in front of Joy FM? I mean, it's nice to have. Can't afford it, can't afford it. And then work, save, and then build up the ability to afford it. It's not a right. Let's get Ghanaians, let's get this out of mind. It's not a right. It's not a right.
They pay taxes.
Well,
they are Ghanaians. They deserve access to other communities.
We don't deserve anything unless we can work and pay for it.
All of us cannot be the same. So those who cannot afford, those who can afford, would use what we've been able to generate to help them.
Well, you can do whatever you like, but you can't afford it. I mean, I think that, you know, the government school in Ajengano, where I live, it could use a lot more of my resources, but I can't afford it. It's as simple. I can't afford it. Let's get this thing out of our head that we don't deserve anything. Whatever we want, we have to work for it. What gives us this right?
If you just joined us, we're talking to Ken Thompson, CEO of Dalex Finance, and we're joined on the phone by engineer Abdulai Mahama.
And by the way, sorry. And you see, I'm sorry. I beg your pardon, sir. You know, and the thing about taxes is that nobody has an issue with paying taxes. It's not a problem. But we need to know that our taxes are being used for the purposes that serve our interest. And that's the problem. We don't even collect enough tax anyway. So that's a different matter. I'm sorry, Badu.
That's okay. I want us to wrap up on the road issue, and then we'll talk about other things. So I'm bringing in engineer Abdulai Mahama here. Now, having taken the point made by Ken Thompson, I don't know if you agree or not, but the president has listed thousands of kilometers of road that he has spent this borrowing on, or some of it on. And so he suggests that, you know, the money was not recklessly spent. But you know the state of our roads, and you know the places where this money has been spent. I wonder what your professional assessment is. Has the money that we've spent on roads been spent responsibly or recklessly?
Good morning to the big man in the studio, Ken Thompson, and a good morning to your cherished listeners and yourself. Hope you are fine.
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
Well, I have to be very candid with my submissions. And first and foremost, I must give the president a thumbs up, because I was the same person last year who digested, diagnosed, went into details when the State of the Nation address was delivered. When I was tackling the issue about the roads, I said that the information that were given to us was not adequate. So trying to match the work done to actual locations was a bit difficult. I must admit that this was an extensive one in terms of the annex that I've received so far, and the various roads that have been itemized or listed in the annex. I'm not done with my checks, but I can say I've done over 60% since last night. Physically calling on my colleagues and engineers I've trained across the country who are on some of these major roads that have been stated. As for Greater Accra and the Eastern region is my baby, so I've done my own check. In fact, I even started before the president's speech, so I can say on authority that, like with the Eastern region, for instance, they've done almost 99.9% of what I've seen in the State of the Nation. And so, in looking at that aspect, I think the roads are being constructed. My issue is the amount, or not amount, my issue is with the needless. And I've kept this campaign over the past 4, 5 or so years, I think about 7 years now, about the needless asphalt overlays that are done in some areas within the capital. Just buttressing what Mr. Ken Thompson has said at Ajingano and other areas, Asylum Down, Adabraka, Cantonment, West Legon, North Legon. And it's interesting to note that an asphalt overlay of 1 kilometer can do about 2 or 3 times the same kilometers in terms of surface dressing. And I always ask why we have resorted to this political game where we are doing asphalt overlays as achievements within the capital, where we have virtually SUV vehicles, passenger car unit vehicles, who do not exert so much load on the roads. And you know that I've stated time with a number that Peduasi Lodge, all the way through Kitase to Ebri to Mampong, all the way to Manferan, about to a Kropon road there. I did that road in 2004 to 2007. And that is what we call the SAPIT, the surface dress road. You cannot tell me that the vehicles that run on that road are less than those that run in East Legon and Cantonment and areas. So I do not see why we cannot do the cheapest road and it will stay more than 20, 30 years with proper supervision within the capital, where we don't have high, heavy axle load vehicles like the ones which are coming from the motorway to the hinterland, fly on them. So on that score, if we talk about that part of the overlays, which is an achievement, I still beg to differ that we should do the least of them that can elongate its life for 20 years and beyond. Where I differ from Honorable Ken Thompson is the fact that the roads may, like, if we cannot do them, we shouldn't be like the one he's compared to Togo and like. We have to be concerned about the fact that it brings a lot of health concerns, respiratory problems. If you don't do at least one layer to dampen the pollution of dust in the neighborhood, especially the built-up areas, it's going to have an impact. Economic-wise, we'll have a challenge, and health-wise, we'll have a challenge. You can just imagine even getting these drugs, these vaccines has become a problem. How much more if we're already having bad roads where we cannot even connect within the capital or the region, and we are actually polluting the environment because we don't have a lot of water browsers to dampen the dust, generating a lot of dust in our homes and creating more health-related problems. What I support with Ken Thompson is that I have gone extensively through the western region, and I've seen massive railway construction being done. But if we don't do the few ones, lot 1, lot 2, lot 3, to actual areas where we start to harness the profit, comparing them to the affordable housings that we have left abandoned, they are all coming under infrastructure, even though I'm just diverging slightly, just to support what he said. If we have about $300 million project sitting at the Pram Road, which is not being inhabited by people, so that we can start to realize the loan and the profit. If we do not do connective roads to the hinterlands where we can get the foodstuffs and other things to export, then we'll have a challenge. But massive construction has taken place, and I can say that in Greater Accra, in the Eastern region, in the Ashanti region, where I actually operate almost every now and then, I've seen a lot, and they are justified in the presentation that the president had delivered yesterday.
Okay.
Quick.
Yes, go ahead.
Last year, we had an unpopular decision by the Minister of Roads and Highways, where the Minister of Finance stated that we're going to cancel the toll, and within 24 hours, the toll was actually stopped. We saw the agitations by the physically challenged people who were manning these places, and they were supposed to be channeled to another place to get at least some small monies or salaries to sustain them. Now that the Minister of Finance in his last year's budget has actually stated that the toll is supposed to be introduced, why are we quiet? The massive road construction that are being done ought to be told. And I stated that if government has challenges with the wager toll and the others, all they need to do was to involve some of us. It was a challenge we took to them that we can engineer the toll areas. We don't necessarily have to have the toll at the same place. I mean, the both approaches at the same place, so that we can have adequate space for storage of vehicles to pay the toll and move ahead. So once the toll has been brought in the budget, the current budget, I don't know why we have not actually started locating some areas of the road, compensating houses which are within those catchment areas, widening these approaches of the toll so that we can realize substantial amount of money from the toll. I am saying that with my checks across West Africa and in South Africa, a car leaving Accra to Kumasi would have paid 94 Ghana cedis for a toll at sections. In Cote d'Ivoire, in Burkina Faso, in Nigeria, they are paying an average of 5 cedis for the SUV cars, where we are paying 50 pesos. Like you said, we need to work our ass out. We need to work ourselves out. Make sure that we are doing the roads and at least earning monies from the road. Otherwise, if you want to play to the gallery of Ghanaians, we will finish these roads, we will borrow massively, and we will not realize the monies therein. Okay. We cannot be doing massive road construction within the capital and expect to make any profit. You can only do that when you're actually segmenting catchment areas where you're going to have your raw material to speedily move from those areas to Accra to go to the port and to be exported. But when we are doing all the major roads in Accra, there's one aspect that we are going to benefit, which is you are reducing massively the traffic time. But apart from that, if we don't tow the road and we don't engineer the road so well that we can tow and realize, say, even 60% of what we have actually sunk into the project, then the bills, the debt that we are going to accrue in the coming years, because we are still doing massive extension routes in the capital, bigger interchanges to drastically reduce the traffic. And when you reduce the traffic, you are actually enhancing workmanship. People go to work early, they go to close early, and it also has its positive effect health-wise. Sure. But we need to actually be tactful to be able to tow the roads, engineer those areas, and actually remove the bottlenecks. I don't have to pay toll at wager. And when I'm about to move, there's a pocket seller, there's a yogurt seller who is actually impeding the flow of traffic from behind. So we have to take all those elements out. In areas where we don't have luxury of land, we have to segment the toll, one about 3 kilometers away from each other, so that the land will be used for adequate storage area for those who are approaching and exiting.
Engineer Mahama, let's just do something, because you are the expert in the field. I've seen the annex, and page 11 talks about summary of completed projects by activity. Asphalt overlay, we know, is 1,807 kilometers. And you've questioned that, and I've said maybe we should be constructing more roads. Now, construction, when they say construction, what does it mean?
Basically, we are talking about roads which are from onset, like a newly identified and engineered road to be constructed. If you look at the example, let me say the Nsawam bypass or any other bypass which is actually being constructed. It is a new road which has not actually received any pavement before. Okay, so once you engineer a new road and you construct a newly constructed, that is what is classified under construction. Some of them are actually intertwined. You have some of them which are rehabilitation. But some of the rehabilitations are so massive that they are even, in terms of the quantum of money involved, it's more than even the construction of a newly diverted or a bypass road.
So there we have 615 kilometers.
Yes.
Okay. I also want to understand graveling or re-graveling, what it means.
Okay. Mostly those one comes mostly under classification under feeder roads.
Okay.
Where you have where the bituminous surface road ends, and you see the continuation, like Thompson rightly said, when you go to Togo and you see gravel roads. These are roads which they are all engineered. You can have the farmland roads connecting to rural areas or some communities, but they are actually engineered, even though they are not receiving the bituminous surface. They are cambered, and cambered means that they are done in a certain shape that anytime there's run of or rainfall, the water is actually collected at the two extreme sides of the road. So they are cambered, and we have this V shape like an earth drain. And reshaping is that once you have not actually put the bituminous surface on them, that is the coater and the chippings. Anytime we go through a certain stage, the road develop potholes, and the assemblies or the Department of Feeder Roads would engage contractors to actually come and fill the potholes again by actually bringing material to reshape and compact to sustain, maybe to lengthen the lifespan of those roads for some time again. And these are done periodically, especially when the rains come, because they are not receiving the steel. There is this ingress of water within the soil. So after the rains, the contractors are asked to move on the road and reshape the alleys to make the riding quality better.
So it could be the case that after graveling, when there are potholes and I re-gravel, I would have worked on the same road twice and calculated the kilometers as work done twice.
Yeah, that's why they stated graveling stroke road graveling. So it means that they have not actually lengthened the road, but they have actually, let's say you are doing 1 kilometer, and you have done the first initial, which means you have come to camber the road, you have engineered the road, and then the subsequent time, maybe within 3 months or 6 months, when the road goes bad, you just come in again and to re-gravel, do some spot pothole patching with the gravel compact, so that you can just improve the riding. So strategically, so that the road graveling, stroke road graveling. It means that it's not like you are actually mentioning the road, or you are lengthening the chainage by multiples of 2 or 3, depending on how many times you have come to reshape the road for improve the riding quality.
Now that's 6,094 kilometers. Let me just do the rehabilitation and upgrading and surfacing. Let's understand these 3, and then I would ask you a question based on the explanation. So, rehabilitation and upgrading and surfacing. Hello, Engineer Mahama.
I didn't hear you.
I was asking, when you say rehabilitation of roads, what does it mean?
A road, in instances where you have a road, probably you have a road which is, I don't know which one is to carry as an example. Let's say the Accra Road. Some portion of the road has gone bad, but you are supposed to rehabilitate the road and then expand it. Maybe you are adding another lane to it. You understand? So you are, even though the project span has not changed, you have actually added other features to improve the nature of the road, depending on the circumstances that are available after you have done your physical observation and studies in that particular section of the road they are trying to improve.
How about upgrading or surfacing?
Upgrading, yes, it comes in the same thing. But you see, sometimes you can do pothole patches and then you put an overlay. You can do the same road which is there, but it didn't have other furnitures like the road furniture like drainage systems and then signal light intersections, other walkways or crash barriers. So you have come to upgrade the road, enhancing its safety and reducing, let's say, assuming that you have a junction which is actually causing so much problem, and you think that maybe adding one lane within that small approach to divert the traffic, you have just come to upgrade the road to enhance the quality or the performance of the road in that particular section.
So, Engineer Mahama, let's do something quickly. Now, if you look at upgrading, surfacing, rehabilitation, there's about 3,000 kilometers of road. Graveling, re-graveling, 6,000. That takes you to 9,000. And asphalt overlay, 1,800, taking you to about 10,800 kilometers. Would you say we have embarked on a massive investment in our roads based on these kilometers and the level of works that we have done?
Yes, I must say that looking at the details that were presented by the President yesterday, I wouldn't just worry your listeners with some of the roads in terms of mentioning the changes or the locations. Some of the roads have overlapped, and rightly so. Some of them were started 8 years ago, 9 years ago. They have not been completed, and they have been completed by this government, and it's ongoing. I think 11,000 plus, having considered the amount of money that goes into doing a kilometer of either a newly constructed, a rehabilitation, pothole patching, or asphalt overlay, quite a significant amount of money from whatever had been borrowed had been sunk into the road construction in the country.
Right. Engineer, I want to ask you this. The President said we have not been reckless in borrowing or spending. Now, when you construct a road and then the construction delays or it gets suspended, or it is not constructed to the right standard and so it deteriorates in a matter of weeks or months, does that not make what should be 1 kilometer perhaps a little more expensive than it should be? Does that not end up with us spending far too much on roads?
Yes, in borrowing Thompson's road, in fact, this is my leader, so I'll just pick out the things he has said. I'm going to do an explanation and leave the rest to the judgment of the listeners.
Okay.
I have stated from 2015, if you go on my Joy Online, they are there. If you go on any other sister stage I've spoken, I said government must blacklist contractors who are undertaking very bad road constructions in this country. And I stated that if we do not do that, if we not start to blacklist contractors who have done terrible roads, and I've seen a lot of them who are still being given or awarded other lucrative contracts. And I've stated again that not this current administration, I mean both administrations, I've stated that I have seen chairmen, leaders of regions of parties who are contractors, who have done arguably very bad roads in the country, and the next year, the next 2 years, you see them doing better or more expensive roads in the country. And if you don't start to have list of contractors who have identified to do bad roads, and then a road which is supposed to have a lifespan of a design lifespan of about 15 years, and that road goes bad in about 3 years. Having in mind the amount of money that has been sunk for the construction, and that contractor is not asked anything, the next 2 years, that person is given a bigger contract. That is recklessness. And if you don't start to identify them, I think the last time I stated this on a station, the minister actually went on the same tangent, agreed on what I was saying. But I want to see action. It should be listed that contractor A did this road. It was an asphalt surface dress road, which has a design lifespan of about 20 years, or 5 years. and then within the 2 years period, the road goes bad. An asphalt over design road, which is supposed to have about 15 years, and within 3 years, the road has gone bad. You may have to now look at what caused the damage or the deterioration of the road. Is it that external activities, sometimes having vehicles going on the road and they having bus tires and they are running on the road, their wheels, the metal wheels cutting across the road, inviting water to go into the water? Is it that we've had permits from the assemblies within that corridor that have given issue to developers to put up buildings to block water channels that are bringing water and debris onto the road, which are causing this deterioration? What is being done to those assemblies? What is being done to the contractor? What is the assessment? What are the reports? So that we, you and I, can actually sit down and digest the issue and say, based on the findings that we have, this road was done properly, but the external factors were the cause of the deterioration, or the roads, per the data that we have actually paid to do a lot of laboratory tests and other things, we found the road to have not been met, have not met the design thicknesses, the design parameters, and therefore the consultant who supervises the road and the contractor both are corporate. And then we can make a headway, because, see, if you take railway, which is the highest in terms of a kilometer money, that is sunk into a kilometer of a railway. The next one is road construction. Asphalt binder concrete cost. Whereas we have a railway having about $7.2 million per kilometer, including the coach. The road is about 3.4 to 3.8, depending on the other facilities that are added. $3.4 million for a kilometer of a road. And if that road should go bad in about 2-3 years, then we have to start to list the contractors and then let them be identified as bad contractors who have executed roads which have not stand with the test of time within the design lifespan.
Right. Thank you for that. Thank you, Engineer Mahama. The President, when he gave his State of the Nation address yesterday, said that he would focus primarily on the economy, and so most of what he delivered was on the economy. Our guests, Ken Thompson and Engineer Abdulai Mahama, are helping us break it all down and understand. Now, another thing he did when he set the terms and conditions for his delivery, first he said he was going to focus mainly on the economy. But he also said, in order to give the State of the Nation in 2023, he had to go back to 2017. I wonder, you, Ken Thompson, you say that you were giving warnings before COVID that if something happens, the economy will crash. But the president insists, and he spent a lot of time going back to set the background and lay the story to drive home his point that the economy was going in the right direction before COVID and Ukraine happened. In fact, he even said the IMF director is his witness, that the IMF director said that our economy was going well before COVID.
In 2017, by the time the president had finished his address, I was in tears. I was just absolutely in tears.
Is that the man in a hurry?
Yeah, the man in a hurry.
Yes.
There was in a hurry. You even touched on certain things that were deeply cultural to us, like timekeeping, about the jobs, about the infrastructure. I was in tears because, he was speaking to my spirit. Yesterday, really, I'm still trying to assess my emotional state. The COVID and Ukraine, for me, are red herrings. And it doesn't matter. It is what it is. There are those of us who've said before that this was going to happen if we continued along the trend. Those of us who have said that COVID and Ukraine just pushed us over the edge. It was going to happen anyway, but except that crystallized earlier. But it doesn't matter. Why are we expending so much effort in trying to justify where we are now? It is what it is. The economy has crashed. We have started with a huge debt exchange program that's taken a lot of money out of the system to pay for, our expenses, what we've done. Whatever it is, somebody said we all enjoyed from the system. Let's move forward. How do we create jobs? How do we strengthen the private sector? yesterday, there was something about COVID, and it was said that the money that was given to the private sector had not been misspent. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, and I'll say it again, the money would have been better utilized if it had been given to the private sector to deploy, private institutions deploy, because state institutions will always waste the money. They have no skin in the game. But let's move forward. It is what it is. It is what it is. I really don't want to go back to whether it's COVID or Ukraine. It is what it is.
But in moving forward, having listened to the president, is there hope?
You always got to give hope a chance. If hope,
do you get hope from the speech that the president delivered yesterday?
My hope has a lot of elements, including what the president said. My hope comes from knowing that, we've got to keep torchlighting our issues. I've got to put shine on our issues because to start solving the problem, you must really understand it, and throw torchlight to shine a light on it. And my hope is that we can inspire the younger people to move this country forward. And somebody will say I'm making some very general statements. Yes, of course I'm making general statements because really it is what it is. It is what it is. We're in a situation where, I see people don't have jobs. If they have jobs, they are losing their dignity because the salaries they are given don't amount to much. We're heavily borrowed. The private sector is weak. Agriculture is weak, and we have to build this country.
Sounds like your hope is based on what we can do as Ghanaians.
But the government is we. It's us.
Yes.
Who's the government? It's us.
But not from the speech that you heard.
The speech is a part of it. I'm saying that I cried in 2017. Yesterday for me, really, it was a State of a Nation address that the head of state was obliged to deliver, constitutionally. And like I said, it's like a class prefect asking to mark themselves. What do you expect? He's going to mark themselves good. So, in respect of that, he hasn't done anything wrong because he's the class prefect, so he's doing a self-assessment. But we've got to keep hope alive. We really have to keep hope alive. And we've got to torchlight our problems. Private sector is too weak. Yes, got to keep hope alive.
He spent most of the time on the economy, touched briefly on a few other things like freedom of speech, which he says is quite high. I don't know, just general thoughts on the non-economy issues before we wrap up.
I'll tell you what I remember from the speech. And I remember he said that the police had been re-equipped with some cars, vehicles, helicopters and the army. Maybe that was the message he wanted to convey. I don't know, but that's what I remember. He talked about the freedom of speech and I think was a bit upset that some diplomats had made a comment on one of our national issues. Well, I mean, he's got a right to be upset, but it's okay. Let's talk to our friends to help us get out of this situation. And hopefully next time, if we don't go with a begging bowl, we'll be able to raise our voice and speak in a manner that befits this country, having 66 years after independence.
All right, I want to say a big thank you to Ken Thompson, CEO of Dalex Finance, thought leader on business and economic matters, and to engineer Abdulai Mahama, civil engineer and construction consultant who joined us on the phone. More on the Super Morning Show after these.